All right, welcome to Pro Football. First 50 years where we take the past and we bring it back to life. Now, I'm strictly talking the first 50 years here, 1920 to 1970. Especially if you're going to go back in time and then check out a game from the 20s and the 30s. I mean, yeah, sure, you can go online and find a box score, who won, who lost, who scored a touchdown, how far a field goal was that someone kicked, where the game was played at, what the attendance was. You might find starting lineups for each team, but exactly what happened during the game. Well, thanks to old newspaper articles, we get to take a little bit of a deeper dive into each and every game during the first 50 years of professional football. Now, little news flash here for you. Ain't no fancy videos here or nothing like that. All there is you and me for the next 30 to 60 minutes, so that's all right with you. Let's get it on in today's game. The Cleveland Browns at the Chicago Cardinals at Soldier Field, October 4th, 1959. Well, I'll tell you, two teams, my bad. I want to just, well, I can't say the Browns are going, the Browns are just, staying pretty much, like, what do you want to call it, the cream of the crop. Although this was not a super spectacular season for them, as usual, they had a winning season. What was it? The only season they came into existence in 46 in the All-American Football Conference, the Cleveland Browns. And from 46 to 59, obviously including this season, they had one losing season. That was 1956 after Otto Graham retired. Now, Paul Brown is still in search of, that the next Otto Graham, and he wasn't going to find him, At Plum, they get into the 60s, he had Ryan, some nice, but there was no Otto Graham. But he did have, obviously, he had a plethora of Hall of Famers on his team, this season here. I mean, you look at these two rosters and you're like, oh my God. I mean, I feel bad for Pop Ivy, the coach of the Cardinals. I mean, you look at his roster, it's like, how did they win any games at all? I mean, really. The year before, they made a trade. They had Ollie Matson. They traded him to the Rams for, I believe it was 8 players and a draft pick. So the Rams got Ollie Matson. Basically, the Cardinals darn near almost got an entire unit. I mean, either offensive or 9 players, and it really didn't help either team, especially this season. I mean, the Rams stunk, the Cardinals stunk. But I mean, he said you go up and down the Cardinals lineup and say, if memory serves, I think Dick Night Train Lane's the only guy on this roster for the Cardinals that went to the Hall of Fame. Now I'll show you all the Famers that were on the Browns team. But we'll pull up the let's go over the Browns here first, the 1959 season. Now they didn't do too particularly well during the exhibition. They were 2-4. They did the final exhibition game was against the Bears, and they did manage to win that one, so they wound up 2-4. But once again, it's exhibition. It always goes two ways. It's like, if you're playing the game, you want to win it. But if you don't, especially because you're trying out your rookies and all that, once again, it's only preseason. It's not the end of the world. But what the Browns did, right, is they kind of fell apart at the end of the season, as you see here. They lost 3 of their final 4. After 8 games of the season, they were 6-2. They were tied with the Giants for first place. So it was up in the air. The Eastern Division was up in the air. Both teams were 6-2. And don't forget about the Eagles. The Eagles were there too. The Eagles lost quite a few of their last games too, when they fell out of the contention too of the Eastern Division. But you see right here, I mean, the Browns lost a 1-point game to the Steelers, then they lost a 1-point game to the 49ers, then the Giants annihilated them in Yankee Stadium, 48-7. Then the Browns would rebound and win the final game of the season against the Eagles. But They still wind up tied for second place once again as usual. The Browns had a winning season. Had to be, obviously, a little on the disappointing side because they were right here after they beat the Redskins 31-17. They had a record of 6-2, and to go from 6-2 to 7-5, you lose 3 of the final 4. That's pretty tough. That I said, now you look right here. I mean, you kind of slide us over here. I mean, of course, you got Jim Brown. So here's one. And Willie Davis. He would go on to bigger and better things, obviously, with the Green Bay Packers. Maybe the Browns should have kept them, but it's Willie Davis. So that's 2 Hall of Famers. Lou Groza, that's 3 Hall of Famers. Gene Hickerson, that's 4 Hall of Famers. One of them's a Hall of Famer, but not so much for his playing ability, more for his coaching ability. Mike McCormick, that would be 5 Hall of Famers. Chuck Noll, heard of him? His coaching ability, that's 6 Hall of Famers. Let's see what we got here. Bobby Mitchell, that's 7 Hall of Famers. And I think that's it. Of course, then you got Paul Brown. So with Brown and the players, I think there's at least 7 Hall of Famers on this team. Out of 36 players, there's more than 36 here. But you're only allowed to have 36 players on your team during the season. So, I mean, you figure, given a point in time, he had 36 players and 7 of them are in the Hall of Fame. Basically, 1 out of every 5 players on Paul Brown's team is in the Hall of Fame. You don't get that nowadays, right? So, I mean, you look at this roster now, to be granted, the Hall of Famers on his team are on the offensive side. They had a nice defense, but their offense was rather special. But more likely it was special because of the running. I mean, the passing was okay. It was not phenomenal. They say because once Otto Graham left, he's tough to replace an Otto Graham. Then you go to the Cardinals. The Cardinals, actually didn't do too bad in the exhibition season, preseason, whatever you want to call it. But once again, it was only the exhibition season or preseason. I think they were 4-3, and 4-3. They played 7 preseason games, 12 regular season games, 7 preseason games. Now, of course, the one of the 7 was against the Toronto Argonauts. You say tomatoes, they say tomatoes. Now, they played them in Toronto. That was August 5th. Now, I don't know. I haven't done a video on it yet. I will be doing a video on it. I don't know if, say, the first half were the NFL rules, the second half were the CFL rules, the whole game was the CFL. I don't know. But the Cardinals went and defeated the Toronto Argonauts 55-26. And then, let's see here. And, they actually beat the Baltimore Colts in the exhibition. They beat the 49ers and they beat the Steelers. So they beat 3 teams that had winning records in the exhibition. So they wound up 4-3. But then you look right here. I mean, it's like, holy cow, Batman. They actually won the first opening day game. So actually, after the week 1, they were actually tied for first place. But then you'll look, something funny happened along the way. They would lose 10 of their final 11 games. They would win. They would beat the Steelers. And then that was it. I mean, their defense was not very good. They gave up a lot of points. Quite often their offense was shut down. I mean, they really did not have much of anything to go by. As I said, Pop Ivy was a there we go, coach. He was a coach in the CFL, a rather successful coach in the CFL, might I add. Oops. So he was with the Edmonton Eskimos. So let me get out of here a little bit. But you'll notice here the first one, right? He finished in the CFL, first place. So every year he was coaching the Edmonton Eskimos, they finished in first place in the CFL, which quite possibly helped him get the job with the Cardinals. Because after 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, he was the coach of the Cardinals. Now, I mean, the first two seasons were not very good. But once they moved to St. Louis, you actually had a winning season. They were actually 6-5-1, and then it was in 1961 here. They finished 5-7. Then he started coaching the Oilers, and 1962, right? They were 11-3. Then they were 6-8. Then that was pretty much it after that. Then he coached a few years here with the Giants. Some of their really horrible seasons. 65 they were 7-7, but 66 they were 1-12-1, and he was the offensive line coach. In 1971, the Giants were 4-10 that year, and their offensive line was not good at all. So after that, his coaching tenure was over. But I mean, you look at we'll go up and down, real fast here. I mean, I've heard obviously here maybe a couple. I mean, there's some guys, Bobby Joe Conrad, John David Crow, very good player. But I mean, you look. I mean, it's like King Hill was their quarterback, who actually had a rather lengthy quarterback career, but majority of it was as a backup quarterback. As a backup quarterback, okay. But as a starting quarterback in the NFL, especially when he doesn't have good weapons around him. Now, had he had some outstanding receivers, had he had Jim Brown and Bobby Mitchell in his backfield, well, maybe he might be a little bit better. Right. But he actually had a lengthy career. But then there were other quarterbacks, so they got Dick Night Train Lane here. That's like it. That's the real big guy. Dick Night Train, Hall of Famer. MC Reynolds, that's their backup quarterback. So you got MC Hammer, just kidding, and King Hill. I mean, it's like those are the quarterbacks. I mean, you got other teams like the Eagles have Sonny Jurgensen, the Hall of Famer. Norman Van Brocklin, Hall of Famer. Pittsburgh had Bobby Lane and Len Dawson. The 49ers had Wyatt Tittle and John Brody. It's like, holy cow. And these guys got MC Reynolds and King Hill as their quarterbacks. So it's like, you look at the roster and it's like, oh my God, who is on this team? So you can also kind of wonder, it's no big shocker why they were not very successful. But this game was played at Soldier Field. Now, this would be the final season Chicago was playing in Chicago. They've been trying to get out of Chicago for a long time. They were always playing the redhead stepchild to the Bears. Their attendance was never very good. Actually, they did play one of their exhibition games was actually in Busch Stadium. They would play the Steelers on September 11th, 9/11, against the Steelers in St. Louis. That's where in 1960 they would move to St. Louis and play in Busch Stadium. Now, during this season, 1959, the Cardinals, two of their home games were in Metropolitan Stadium, where the Vikings would play in 1961. So two of their home games were in Bloomington, Minnesota. This one was against the Giants, and the other one was against the Eagles. They lost both of them, but they putting him in Metropolitan Stadium. It was kind of like a twofer. It's kind of like the Cardinals were looking to get the heck out of Chicago, so they're trying to also where could we maybe move, right? Where was going to be a good place for us to move where we might get a good fan base. But also the NFL was looking to expand as well. It was what they would do in 1960 when the Cowboys would come to town. But was the AFL was coming around in 1960. So the AFL was going to start putting teams in cities, and the NFL did not want to get, I don't know, get bumped out of a city or so. So the NFL wanted to get in the cities that look, promising, where it would be good to start a team. And obviously, 1960 would put a team in Dallas. So would the AFL. 1961, the NFL would put a team in Minnesota, where the Vikings would start. So, but But for the Cardinals, I mean, this season couldn't get over with fast enough. They couldn't get out of Chicago fast enough. And in 1961, it was 1960. I'm sorry, they would get their wishes. They would start moving to St. Louis. So this game, though, was played in Soldier Field. So let's see what old Wikipedia has to say on Soldier Field here. All right. Soldier Field, historically often referred to as Soldiers Field. I always call it Soldier Field. Multi-purpose stadium on the near south side of Chicago. Opened in 1924, the stadium has served as the home of the Chicago Bears since 1971, as well as the Chicago Fire of the Soccer League. It also regularly hosts stadium concerts and other large crowd events. The stadium has a football capacity of 62,500. Well, I'm not sure if that's up to date or not. That I'm not exactly sure. But here's a picture of it over here, Soldier Field in 2022. I mean, they've done a lot of remodeling to it over the years. That's for sure. The stadium's interior was rebuilt as a part of a major renovation project in 2002 and in 2003, which modernized the facility but lowered the seating capacity, eventually causing it to be delisted as a National Historic Landmark in 2006 because they upgraded it and everything. But December 3rd, 1919, Chicago-based architectural firm Holabird and Roach, I guess, was chosen to design the stadium, which broke ground on August 11, 1922. The stadium cost $13 million to construct, which was a lot of money back then. Let me tell you, I mean, a lot of the stadiums I was seeing was getting built for maybe about $1 million. $13 million back then was a huge amount of money. A large sum for a sporting venue at the time. In comparison, the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum had cost less than $1 million. Why did this cost 13 times the amount of money? Let's see. On October 9, 1924, the 53rd anniversary of the Great Chicago Fire, the stadium was officially dedicated as the Grant Park Stadium. Yeah. On November 11, 1925, the stadium's name was changed to Soldier Field in dedication to the U.S. soldiers who had died in combat during World War I. And I'll tell you what, boy, anytime you can dedicate a stadium to the armed forces, go for it. So, let's see. Its formal rededication of Soldier Field was held during the 29th annual playing of the Army-Navy game on November 27, 1926. I mean, a lot of things obviously, went on there. Let's see. Chicago Bears move in. Before they moved into the stadium, the Bears had played select charity games at Soldier Field as early as 1926 when they played their former crosstown rivals, the Cardinals. The Cardinals also used the stadium as their home field for their final season in the city in 1959. Ta-da! What we're talking about, right? But of course, as the Cardinals were in the Soldier Field this year, the Bears were in Wrigley Field. But in 1971, the Bears moved into Soldier Field full time. Originally with a 3-year commitment, but let's say we got here's Soldier Field in 1963. I mean, just look how huge it is, Wow. Renovations, all kinds of stuff, The renovations and landmark delisting because of the renovations and all wasn't. I mean, you can see right here. Look right here, right? Aerial view of Soldier Field during the renovation in 2002. It's like totally gutted. It's not the same, pretty much anywhere near the same stadium as it was prior. Right? It was built 100 years ago, but I mean, I don't know if any of it's 100-year part is still around. I mean, you can see how modern it is right now. But it's nice. I mean, because so many of the stadiums, they get up there in age, and unfortunately, sometimes they just wind up falling apart. And it's, I guess, more cost effective or whatever, just to either knock it down or you just build a new stadium. So sadly, a lot of these great stadiums from the past go by the wayside. Yeah, I mean, look at that. I mean, that's nothing what it used to look like. Back in the day. Here we go. Now, this is Soldier Field during the 1926 Army-Navy game. Look, the freaking place is just freaking packed. But, I mean, you can see the columns up here and just how, I mean, the columns ain't there no more. I mean, where they're here, right? I guess maybe they're on the other side as well. But, I mean, you can't see them. This is a Soldier Field where I was growing up. That, you see the people, but then you see, this up here. You always saw that. I mean, just so many things that went on in the stadium, college football. I mean, there you go, motor sport race at Soldier Field in 1951. I mean, my goodness. Right? The hockey, the outdoor hockey. We got the Chicago, the Blackhawks, and the Penguins played there. Soldier Field before a soccer game in 2004. Now, I guess that they don't play baseball there, but a lot of things went on there. A lot of things went on there. So let me show you some pictures here. Now, obviously, there's not a ton of pictures with the Cardinals, anyway. But there is, was it the program? Let me see. Actually, I found something that shows about this game, and there's something else, a little side note on this. I think it's the program for this game. So let's share the screen. Cardinals at Soldier Field, 1959. Here we go. Let me pop this right up here for you. Look. And right here, the Cardinals versus the Browns, Sunday 1:05 at Soldier Field. Good seats available. Yeah, because it didn't sell out. But game will be over in time to watch the World Series on TV. Now, why that's so important for the Chicago audience is that the Chicago White Sox were in the World Series in 1959. And the games 3, 4, and 5. Now, this date, I just looked. I didn't remember what game it was, but this was during this game. On this date was Game 4 of the World Series, which was played out in Los Angeles in Memorial Coliseum, and it was over 90,000 people in attendance there. So the game was probably started around 4 o'clock Chicago time, I guess 3, 4 o'clock Chicago time, because obviously it was out in Los Angeles where I guess the baseball game started at 1 o'clock. So you can come and watch the game here at 1 o'clock, get home, and pretty much in time maybe to start watching the entire World Series. So, it was big back then. The White Sox hadn't had much going on for them in the world of baseball in quite some time. The World Series be not very good to the White Sox in 1959. The Dodgers would win 4-2. But it was just kind of odd. I seen this and it was like, oh yeah, get home in time to see the World Series. Let's see, as I said, there's not a ton, of. But here's the one game here, right? This should be the Cardinals leave, but the Cardinals and the Bears played each other. Now you see there's a decent amount of fans here, but that's because the Bears are playing. If it was just the Cardinals, not necessarily. Let's see here. Oh, here we go. Is it the same thing? This might be. This might be the 59 game. There's a bunch of fans, but this is the Chicago Cardinal game in 1959. Let's see. Oh, there you go, Chicago. Oh, there you go. Here's I guess what they're saying anyway. bunch of happy faces here. Look at that guy. Look how happy he is for the Cardinals. And this is just kind of like, they just had white helmets, right? Let's see, is there anything else? I mean, yeah, there's not a ton of stuff with the Cardinals. But then I think in 1960 is when, in 1960, today I'm not sure what date that was, but NFL proves the move for Cardinals to go to St. Louis. In 1960, the Cardinals started putting the bird on the side of their helmet. So for the first time, 1960. That's where they got that at. There's the Cardinals and Bears. But that's not 1959, that's for sure. Where are we at here? There you go. There's the Cardinals and the Bears. Right. There's the Bears. There's the Cardinals. I'm not sure exactly what year this was, but this is Wrigley Field. As you can see, the ivy-covered wall, although the ivy's not in bloom. Let's see here. I mean, unfortunately, a lot that goes on with the Cardinals was not at Soldier Field. Right? But I mean, here, this is what I'm used to, right? When you see Soldier Field, not so much this guy here, but this is Soldier Field. All the modernization they did to it and everything. This is maybe still there, but it's on the outside. You can't see it anymore. So I said, so there's not a ton of a lot that's going on here. This is probably not. I mean, this may not even been Soldier Field there, but this is the Cardinals with the white helmets, just white helmets. It almost kind of reminds me of like the kind of helmets I would get like when I was growing up, like at Sears might have or something like that. The little couple face, the face mask and there's a white helmet, plop a white helmet on you, and there you go, you're the Cardinals. Let's see. Yeah, this isn't that either, but this looks like the Cardinals there. Yeah. So there's not a lot, I said, but after this, see how modern. See, I mean, you can see all of this here, right? Yeah, that's still there, but I mean, you see how modern it looks. So they built everything up, up high. So everything's more modern, probably much more luxurious, right? But you can see it looks absolutely nothing, pretty much compared to what it did in the day. I said, but yeah, the Cardinals couldn't get out of Chicago fast enough. And in 1960, they would get their wish. So, all right, so let's see. What do we got now? Some pregame action here. What do we got going on here? So let's go to the Plain Dealer, which is an Ohio paper. October 4th, 1959 edition of the Plain Dealer. What do they got to say on the game there? All right, here we go. Oh, they're checking the security. Okay, I check out. We can read the ad. Okay, so the game was at 2 p.m. All right, so there's the starting lineup for each team, offensive lineup, I believe, for each team. All right, yeah. King Hill, yeah, and Mill Plum. Yep. Then we got, let's see. So I'm going to say, so you figure, you got Jim Brown, Hall of Famer, Bobby Mitchell, Hall of Famer, McCormick Hill, Hall of Famer, Hickerson, Hall of Famer, Groza, Hall of Famer. Now, if they put Chuck Noll in here, right here, he played on it. He played guard too. I mean, they had 5 Hall of Famers on their offense. Crazy, huh? All right, Browns on spot in card tussle. Now the Browns are, because the Browns lost the opening day game. They're 0-1. It's a bit odd for the Browns, to start 0-2, and it's like, oh my, early in the season, it's like, the Browns might even be out of contention after the first few weeks or so. So a loss today would hinder the chances for a title. Pop Ivy beefs up the Chicago attack. The Browns and Cardinals, who clash this afternoon in an important football game at Soldier Field, must feel like forgotten men in this baseball-frenzied town. To find mention of the meeting and the 2 p.m. Cleveland time kickoff, you had to search the remote corners of the newspapers. The bus driver who yesterday met the team at Midway Airport, the hotel clerk who checked in the players, the bellboys who carried the bags, all were talking about those new darlings of the loop, the Chicago White Sox. Well, they better enjoy this one season, because after this one season, there wasn't much to talk about with the White Sox. A week ago in Pittsburgh, the Browns were a relaxed, gay group, but 8 days have made a difference. That opening loss to the Steelers has put them on the spot. Now, they did, not that their defense was that bad, but they only scored 7 points. They scored 7 points in the first half, and that was it. So, Browns have a 16-2 edge in the card series, and it would be 17-2 after this game is over. They lost this afternoon to the Cardinals, who are somehow the Cardinals are actually, because the Cardinals are at home. The Cardinals won handily their first game of the season, and the Browns lost by 10 points on the road their first game of the season. So I guess I can kind of see where the Cardinals would be maybe a 3-point favorite. They're at home. They're 1-0. The Browns are 0-1. So, but take the Browns on this one. Let's say 3-point. Won't put the Browns out of the Eastern Division race. It will make the title trail extremely difficult, though. You lose a couple games early on in a 12-game season. It's awfully difficult. The Giants coming into Cleveland for the home opener next Sunday. This will be the 19th meeting of the two teams, and the Browns have a 16-2 bulge in the series. Only in 1956, when Cleveland fortunes were at a low ebb, was Chicago able to register victories. So basically from 1950 to 55, and from 57 and 58, the Browns won every game against the Cardinals. The Cardinals gave Paul Brown's club a fight last season, finishing on the short end of 35-28 and 38-24 counts. Since then, Pop Ivy beefed up his defense in a trade with the Rams. And I think that is all for that. A lot of small articles. I said, talking about the especially in the Chicago area. I mean, a lot of their ads, articles, shall I say, were directed toward the World Series for good reason. All right, so next we got the Chicago Tribune, October 4th, 1959 edition of the Chicago Tribune. What do they got to say? All right, here we go. All right, let me try to refresh the page here just so it doesn't go. Cards try Dazzlers on solid Browns. Division chances hinge on victory Sunday. Now, this is the Colts and the Bears who played. Bears down, NFL champions, 26-21. These two teams played on Saturday. Has become axiomatic in the National Football League during the last decade that no team wins the Eastern Division Championship without beating the Cleveland Browns. Sunday's professional presentation in Soldier Field, therefore, can be considered a first-class test of the Chicago Cardinals' pennant chances. Victory over the Browns will place the Cardinals in an enviable position. It also would leave the once haughty Clevelanders with a record of no successes and 2 defeats in a season that is only 8 days old. Ooh. Browns can be had. Pittsburgh Steelers demonstrated in the league opener a week ago that Cleveland, like the New York Yankees, can be had. The Yankees found out finally that it takes more than a fat scrapbook to overcome the opposition, and Cleveland may be on the verge of learning the same lesson. Time and vagaries, of the National League draft system are beginning to tell on the Browns, or at least so the Steelers made it appear last week. The Browns may no longer be the scourges of the Eastern Division, and it may no longer be imperative to beat them to achieve championship rating. But a triumph over them would enhance the Cardinals' prestige a great deal more than last week's one-sided success against Washington. Cleveland is considerably more potent than the Redskins. Nanowski may fill gap. Pittsburgh discovered how to contain Jim Brown and Bobby Mitchell, and the Cardinals also may keep these two marauders from running wild. If they do, King Hill, John David Crow, and Mal Hammock may enjoy some measure of revenge for the disappointments encountered last season when they led the league in scoring against the Browns, but lost both engagements 35-28 and 38-24. Brown undoubtedly is one of the outstanding football players of all time, and a more dangerous runner than Mitchell, the old Illinois Flash, it would be difficult to find. But Pittsburgh held them in check long enough to win, and the hope is that the Cardinals may get eager enough to do the same. Cleveland's quarterbacking now is in charge of Milt Plum, who is, however, said to be slightly indisposed. If he is not able to accept the signals from Coach Paul Brown, Jim Nanowski, the former Michigan State star, will be a quarterback. Coach Brown, however, is not eager to rely on Nanowski. The young Spartan lacks experience, and he did not have a super spectacular exhibition season either. And here is, and you see, this is because the Bears and the Colts played the day before. See, they both played 2 games already. All right. Now, next, what do we got now? We got the Akron Beacon Journal, Akron, Ohio. So we got another Ohio paper here. The October 4th, 1959 edition of the Akron Beacon Journal. What do they got to say? All right. Let me refresh so it doesn't screw up on me here. Okay. Cards favor Dan Brown's second defeat. Well, Mama's wrong again. I'll tell you. This would not be much of a contest. In 14 seasons in the pro football business, the Cleveland Browns never have lost their first 2 games of the season. But the Browns face an all-out effort today against the Chicago Cardinals in Chicago to keep their record intact. Last week's opening game defeat at the hands of the Pittsburgh Steelers wasn't the first time the Browns have dropped their lid lifter. They lost openers on 4 other occasions, but only once have failed to bounce back all the way. The exception was 3 years ago when they lost to the Cards 9-7 and they staggered to their worst record in history, 5 wins in 12 games. Cleveland lost to Washington in 55 opener and to Philadelphia in 54, but each time came back to win the league title. In 51, the Browns bowed to San Francisco in their first game, but rallied to take the division flag. The Browns are 2.5-point underdogs in what promises to be a high-scoring affair today. Last year, the Browns beat the Cards by scores of 35-28, 38-24. Coach Frank Ivy's multi-formation attack features the running of John David Crow and Bobby Joe Conrad, and the passing of King Hill and MC Reynolds. Last week, the Cards netted 569 yards, only 10 shy of their all-time mark. Wow. Jeez. And I said, you look at the team, it's like, who the heck is on this team? Oh, my God. And they put up almost 570 yards of offense. It's like, whew. Much of the Browns' effectiveness will depend on the physical condition of Milt Plum and Ray Renfro. Plum is nursing a bruised chest, Renfro a sore foot. The Browns will, however, have the services of Mike McCormick at tackle for the first time this season. And then, of course, there's other games. The Giants are 6-point choices over the Eagles at Philadelphia, and the Eagles would blow the doors off the Giants. Was it 49-21? So the Giants were 6-point favorites, and the Eagles were beaten by 28 points. So, all right, then we got the Zanesville Signal. Oh, yeah. The October 4th, 1959 edition of the Zanesville Signal. Wow. What's that paper got to say about the game? Whoops. Apparently there's a couple things they got to say on the game here. Browns hold psycho edge over the Cardinals. Let me refresh the page here just in case. All right, here we go. The Cleveland Browns have a tough nut to crack, but hold a psychological edge in meeting the Chicago Cards Sunday in the Windy City. The Cards were 33-31 victims of the Browns in the last exhibition game before the season started. They, however, won their first season game against Washington, while the Browns were losing their opener to the Steelers in Pittsburgh. The Chicago backfield is one of youth, speed, and experience. Youth and experience. Okay. Given the opportunity, it could break the game wide open. On the other hand, the Browns' backfield is no amateur group and is led by the National Football League's leading ground gainer, fullback Jimmy Brown. Starting for Chicago probably will be King Hill at quarterback, Bobby Joe Conrad at right half, and John David Crow at left halfback. Mal Hammock, coming into his own this year after 3 years of watching Ollie Matson carrying the mail, will be at fullback. The passing abilities of Hill and alternate quarterback MC Reynolds should give the Browns a lot to worry about. Not this game. In last Sunday's game, though, Hill completed 14 passes for 229 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Reynolds, who took over late in play, threw for touchdown plays of 12 and 85 yards. The Browns, if last Sunday's difficulties are any gauge, will have trouble defending against Chicago's pass-grabbing ends, Woodley Lewis and Sonny Randall. Lewis was 6th in the league last year, and Randall snagged 2 scoring passes in his first pro game last week. The Browns were unable to defend against Steelers quarterback Bobby Lane's aerial attack. Preston Carpenter managed to shake off the defender to snag the ball to score. Coach Paul Brown's team is hampered further by possible crippling injuries. Quarterback Milt Plum has an injured chest. A blow there could put him out of action for some time. And speedster Ray Renfro, the receiving end of most pass plays, has been hobbling around with a sore foot. Either of these injuries, if further agitated, could make the difference. There's another one here. Oh, okay. Wait. Nope. Oh, okay, hold on. Then there was another one here for the Zanesville Signal. Let's see here. Whoops. Boy. Oh. All right, so hold on. This one here is another one for the Zanesville Signal here. Pop that one up. October 4th, 1959. Here we go. What's this one got to say here? Cleveland Browns concentrate on forward wall for success. Oh, let me refresh this just in case here. All right. It's what's up front that counts, and that may be the story of the Cleveland Browns this year when they tried to regain the National League's Eastern Division title. The Browns, winners of 7 division and 4 league crowns, were dumped into second division, and 4 league crowns were dumped into second place last year when their perennial stingiest defense in the league leaked a team high mark of 217 points. Coach Paul Brown is determined it won't happen again. Of the original Browns who began their careers in the All-American Conference 14 years ago, only Lou the Toe Groza, the big offensive tackle and place-kicking specialist, is back this year. Elsewhere in the forward ball, Cleveland will be depending upon a mixture of veterans and rookies to throttle the opposition, provide protection for quarterbacks Milt Plum and Jim Nanowski, and open the doors for its great fullback, Jimmy Brown. The talent-laden rookie crop includes tackles Francis O'Brien of Michigan State, ends Rich Kreitling of Illinois, Dick Shathrath of Ohio State, and guard John Wooten of Colorado. O'Brien, a 235-pounder, may have to handle the early season responsibilities of filling the shoes of right offensive tackle and team captain Mike McCormack, sidelined with a knee injury. Thorough testing of the newcomers always cost Cleveland exhibition game victories that doesn't worry Coach Paul Brown. This kind of material comes along only so often, and you have to be careful in what you do with it, he explains. The rookie ends, coupled with the acquisition of veteran Billy Houghton from Green Bay, indicates the Browns will do more passing this year. Houghton, who has caught 303 passes for 5,581 yards and 43 touchdowns in 7 seasons with the Packers, very impressive for back then, will be coupled with fellow Texan Ray Renfro to pose a 1-2 receiver threat. Renfro at the flanking halfback caught 6 touchdown passes last season and is one of the game's top receivers. Unless there is a sharp reversal in form by sophomore Nanowski, the number 1 quarterback chores again will be performed by Plum. Nanowski from Michigan State was given a third try in early exhibition play but couldn't move the team in sustained drives. Plum, former Penn State star, finished second in the league in passing last year with a mark of 102 completions and 189 attempts for a total gain of 1,619 yards, 11 touchdowns, and an average gain of 8.46 yards. In addition to Renfro and Houghton, he'll also have veteran receivers in Frank Clark and Preston Carpenter. Notwithstanding the revived accent on passing, Cleveland's offense again will depend primarily on the efforts of power running back Brown, assisted by scatbacks Bobby Mitchell and Leroy Bolden. Brown led the NFL in rushing last season with a league record of 1,527 yards and 257 carries, and tied the touchdown mark with 18 touchdowns in 12 games. He scored 1.5 touchdowns a game. Whew. There's no sign of a let-up in sight this year. Jim has looked better than ever in the warm-up games. Oh, and that is so true. I mean, it's amazing as I, reading his exhibition games with the Brown. It's amazing. Like, the play a game and you read it's like Jim Brown ran it for a 70-yard touchdown. Of course, it was exhibition, but it was amazing how well he did in the preseason. And of course, because it's exhibition, they're not giving him the ball as much as you usually would. Dude was just unbelievable back then. All right, so let's go to the Cleveland Press, the October 5th, 1959 edition of the Cleveland Press. What happened during the game? Well, let's find out here. Well, Cleveland Press. All right, here we go. When you've got a cannon, why use a pop gun? They run Jim Brown 37 times. Jim Brown dislikes playing on muddy fields. Friends and foe alike will find that difficult to believe after the Cleveland fullback's remarkable performance in yesterday's 34-7 victory over the Cardinals in Chicago. Jim and the ooze at Soldier Field seemed made for each other as a 1958 Pro Player of the Year battered the defensive line of the National Football League's dark horse team 37 times for 147 yards and 2 touchdowns. That bettered by 3 carries his own team record and was only 2 trips short of the league mark set by Harvey Newman of the New York Giants against Green Bay 25 years ago. Jim ran 34 times against the Cards in Cleveland last year. It was all in a day's work, said Brown in his usual quiet, nonchalant manner as he rubbed himself dry after a welcome shower. I actually felt better in the last half than in the first. Got my second wind, I guess. I don't like playing on muddy fields, though, he continued. It definitely is to be a short yardage game. There's little chance for cutting and breakaways. Paul Brown put it this way concerning the emphasis on Jim. Why shoot a pop gun when we have a cannon? Jim is a sure-handed, and with those playing conditions, we didn't get very fancy. The Browns now find themselves in a highly unusual six-way tie. After 2 weeks of the season, there was only two teams that were undefeated, the 49ers and the Packers. And they would wind up playing each other in week 3. So after 3 weeks of the season, the 1959 season, only the Green Bay Packers would beat the 49ers. Only the Packers were the only team after 3 weeks. 12 teams. There was only one team after 3 weeks that was still undefeated. That would be the Packers. But if you look in the Eastern Division, every team was 1-1 after 2 weeks. So even the Cardinals got blown out in this game. They're still tied for first place. Browns now find themselves in a highly unusual six-way tie in the Eastern Division, and the championship race will start from scratch again following Sunday. Next assignment for Cleveland is defending champion New York as the Browns open a 3-week stand at the stadium. In fact, the Browns will play their entire 6-game home schedule on the next 8 weekends. Somewhat overshadowed by Browns' bruising work, but remarkable, too, was the passing of Mill Plum in a continuous rain that held the crowd to a disappointing 19,935. Plum misfired only 3 of 14 pitches for a net of 139 yards and 2 touchdowns. He passed 5 yards to Ray Renfro to follow up 2 scoring drives by the Browns and give Cleveland a 21-0 halftime lead and finished the day with a 36-yard TD toss to Billy Houghton. Junior Wren posted the Browns' other touchdown when he picked up a fumble by Chicago's Bobby Joe Conrad and raced 44 yards on the second play of the third quarter. That preceded the Cards' lone tally in which quarterback King Hill climaxed a 77-yard drive with a 1-yard sneak. We got another. I got another one here, right? Yeah, the Cleveland Press. So another article here on the October 5th, 1959 edition of the Cleveland Press. Got another one here. All right, what do we got here? What do we got? Oh, and there's tough to see. Jim Brown's first touchdown of the season came early in the first quarter. Now, the Browns only scored 1 touchdown against the Steelers, and Mill Plum snuck over on a quarterback sneak for their only touchdown. So Jim Brown didn't get a touchdown in the first game. So Brown is shown diving over a pile of players on a 3-yard scoring play. And Pop Ivy said mud was no excuse. Frank Pop Ivy, the Chicago Cards coach, refused to blame the weather for the team's poor showing yesterday, even though the rain and goo obviously hurt the Cards' tricky offense. The mud was no excuse, said Ivy. We've got to be able to play under any conditions. Jim Brown 4-yarded us to death, he added. Brown averaged 4 yards a trip for his many efforts. Someone in the Cards' hushed dressing quarters mentioned that the Browns' ability to make key third down plays was damaging, too. Cleveland made 10 first downs, including 2 for touchdowns in third down situations. That's freaking huge. That's huge. 6 fumbles. The Cardinals, whose ground attack depends on fast ball handling and faster running, fumbled the slippery ball 6 times and lost 4 times. The Browns stuck to power and didn't bobble once. And during the 59 season, the Browns did a phenomenal job of holding on to the football, barely fumbling the ball at all. I think going into the final game of the 59 season, if I remember correctly, they played the Eagles. The Browns had only lost 4 fumbles all season long in their first 11 games. As you see here, sometimes teams lose 4 fumbles in a game. The Browns lost 4 fumbles in their first 11 games combined. So Chicago finished with an edge in passing yardage, but only through sheer weight of numbers. The Cards passed 38 times and ran only 23. My legs really feel tired, but my knee is just fine, happily reported Mike McCormick after going the route at right tackle in his first game since December. Paul Brown said, "We have a two-sided offense with Mike in there. I have confidence." I'll pull up the stats in just a second. "I have confidence in calling plays to the right side." The Browns gave the game ball to Dr. Ralph Kovac, the man who performed the surgery on McCormick's knee. Dr. Kovac, substituting for ailing team physician Dr. Vic Ippolito, sat on the Cleveland bench and said, "I was watching Mike all the way and praying every time he went in." Defensive tackle Willie McClung suffered a broken right thumb on the last play of the game. Oof. Lou Groza's first extra point kick ripped right through the umbrella of a spectator sitting in the temporary stands. Wow. And unfortunately, the rain cost the Cardinals quite a bit of money, is what they say anyway. Walter Wolfner, managing director of the Cardinals, figured the rain that started 2 hours before game time cost the team at least $50,000 in revenue. All seats at Soldier Field are exposed to the elements, and there was practically no gate sale. Let's see. Dressing room visitors included Don Paul, George Young. Paul returned to Cleveland with the team and then went on to Erie on business. Ray Renfro's foot felt better, although he still wasn't running up to par. Gene Hickerson suffered a bad leg cut. Oof. Final innings of the World Series games were piped through the plane's speaker system for the players' benefit on the trip home. Jim Brown was unhappy about the quick whistle that cost him a long touchdown run. He was stopped at the line, but slipped off and broke away. "A lot of my gains came on second effort," he said. You want to see some soccer scores? There you go. But here we go. Here's the stats, right? Yes, it was 17 out of 30, but they're 11 out of 14 passes. Very, very efficient. But you see, I mean, they lost 4 fumbles, passes intercepted by, so it looks like the Browns picked off a pass, and the Cardinals lost 4 fumbles, so they had 5 turnovers, where the Browns didn't have any. That's huge. Hey, there's the Cardinals receiving. A lot of guys catch passes. That's because they were down. They had to throw the ball all the time. Right? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The rushers. There's the rushers here. I'm sorry. And here's Jimmy Brown, Bobby Mitchell. There's the passers. MC Reynolds was 6 out of 13. King Hill was 11 out of 25. Mill Plum, 11 out of 14. But the thing is, an effective running game helps open up the pass a little bit, right? So we're the receiver. Lewis scored 8 passes for 106 yards. Very impressive. He had a good day. Not sure how Hammock didn't catch a pass, but somehow he got 5 yards. I'm not sure about that one, but. All right, so what we got now here? We got all right, now we got let's see here. We got the Plain Dealer. October 5th, 1959 edition of the Plain Dealer. What do they got to say? All right. Whoa. Underdog Browns riddle Cardinals 34-7. Yeah. All right. Carl Ferrello. Happy camper. Jim Brown's 2 TDs paced the route. The Browns today find themselves locked in a six-way first-place tie in the National Football League Eastern Division. They did their part by upsetting the favorite Chicago Cardinals 34-7 yesterday in the rain at Soldier Field before 19,935. Taking full advantage of Jim Brown's power running on a slippery turf that made cutting almost impossible, the Browns scored 28 of their points before the Cards put any on the board. Cleveland's move into the division tie had the cooperation of both the Giants and the Steelers. The Giants, who helped the Browns open their home season next Sunday, fell before the Philadelphia Eagles. Pittsburgh bows to Washington. Pittsburgh somehow beat the Browns, but then they lost to one of the worst teams in football. Pittsburgh, which ruined the Cleveland opener, was the victim of the Washington Redskins, who allowed the Cardinals 49 points only a week back. Jim Brown, who attacked the Cardinal line 37 times for 147 yards, scored 2 touchdowns. He registered the first on a 2-yard plunge and scored from the 1 in the second quarter. Jim's previous tops in the carries was 34 against the Cards in Cleveland last season. Ray Renfro, apparently free of the arch injury that bothered him against the Steelers, took a 5-yard end zone pass from Milt Plum for the third Cleveland touchdown. Junior Wren hiked the bulge in the third period by hot-footing at 44 yards into the end zone after scooping up a fumble by Bobby Joe Conrad. Plum, who did a remarkable job of ball handling and passing considering field conditions, hit Billy Houghton in the end zone for the 5th Cleveland touchdown, with time running out in the 4th quarter. It was a nice toss by the former Penn Stater and an equally fine catch by Houghton, who beat the left side of the Cards' secondary to make a leaping grab. Groza misses on 5th try. Lou Groza made the first 4 extra points from placements. When the 5th try hit the crossbar for a miss, the Browns already had their first victory of 1959 clinched. Paul Brown wasn't happy when he saw the driving rain and bad field conditions, but they proved more of a handicap to the Cards. Coach Pop Ivy's club has a razzle-dazzle offense featuring wide plays. All right, so let's go to the next page here of the Plain Dealer. The October 5th, 1959 edition of the Plain Dealer. Let me reset this here just in case. All right, there we go. Let me find it here. And it's ended. What is that? What do we got here? Featuring wide plays and intricate ball handling. Yesterday at Boomerang, the Cards fumbled 6 times, and 2 of them were turned into Brown touchdowns. The Cleveland backs kept possession of the slippery pigskin with nary a bobble. Chicago's lone touchdown came in the 3rd quarter. The Cards drove 77 yards with quarterback King Hill sneaking the last yard. They were aided in that push by a defensive holding penalty. Leroy Bolden downed the opening kickoff in the end zone, so the Browns moved 80 yards in 13 plays for their first touchdown. For the most part, it was a matter of grinding out the yardage with an occasional short pass mixed in for the variety. Jim Brown carried the ball 8 times and took a flare pass from Plum, good for 21 yards and the longest gain of the push. Jim hurled the last 2 yards after the score. After Bobby Mitchell returned a punt by Jerry Norton 3 yards to the Cleveland 35, Paul Brown's club was on the prowl again early in the second period. The Browns went 65 yards in 13 plays, but Renfro shaking loose in the mud for 2 key catches. Carpenter also grabbed a pass over the middle for 11 yards and a first down on the Cardinal 9. From there, Jim Brown took it over in 2 smashes, moving 1 yard for the payoff. Paul Wiggin recovered a fumble by John David Crow just after the 2-minute pause, and it gave the Browns a first down on the Cardinals' 11-yard line. Brown cracked to the 5 in 2 tries, and Plum hit Renfro in the corner of the end zone for the touchdown. So the Browns had a 21-0 halftime lead. After getting that early lead, the Browns used the forward pass with caution. Plum completed 11 out of 14 passes he fired for 154 yards. The Cards with both Hill and Reynolds, and MC Reynolds doing the tossing through 38 times and completed 17 for 172 yards, although apparently they only had one pass picked off. So for them to throw the ball 38 times in those kind of conditions and all that, back in 1959, only get one pass picked off is pretty good. Many of those completions came late in the contest, with the Browns secondary laying back to protect against the long throw. Keep everything in front of you. Come up, make the tackle, right? Keep the clock running. If they want to complete a 5 or 10 yard pass, go right ahead. The clock's going to keep running, and you're going to lose. Renfro turned in a fine game, catching 5 passes for 54 yards, and Houghton picked off 2 for 43. Woodley Lewis was the favorite Cardinal target, and he wound up with 8 catches for 106 yards. Wren traveled to 44 yards for his touchdown on the second play from scrimmage after the second half kickoff. Walt Michaels, backing up the right side, put his shoulder into Conrad, and the halfback parted company with the football. All right, then we got the Chicago Tribune, the October 5th, 1959 edition of the Chicago Tribune. All right, what's that got to say here? All right. And apparently the Braves lost their manager. He quit. Just in case you're wondering, Haney quits as the Braves manager. All right. Weather and Jim Brown beats the Cardinals. The Weather and Big Jim Brown combined Sunday to remove the Chicago Cardinals from among the unbeaten in the National Football League. Slashing, plowing, and struggling through the mire and a steady drizzle in Soldier Field, Brown scored twice as Cleveland whipped the Cardinals 34-7 before a surprising turnout of 19,935 drenched football devotees. Coach Frank Ivy's spectacular double wing T formation with its tricky ball handling was completely out of its element under prevailing conditions, and the Cardinals committed 6 fumbles, 4 of which the Browns recovered. While the Cardinals were attempting futility to dazzle the Browns with their speed and legerdemain, Cleveland kept wheeling the 228-pound Brown against the right side of the Cardinal line, concentrating on Ed Hussman, tackle Frank Fuller, and linebacker Bill Comain. Brown carried on 37 of Cleveland's 45 running plays. His total was just 2 short of the league record set by Harry Newman, New York Giant quarterback, against Green Bay in 1934. He piled up 147 of the Browns' 160 yards rushing. He contributed 10 of the Browns' 20 first downs, and when he left the arena, he was a weary, gallant conqueror, looking like a section of the gridiron heading for the exit. The Cardinals' normal flouncy offense had only one fling, moving the ball 54 yards to the Browns' 28-yard line after the Cleveland had marched 80 yards in 15 plays with the opening kickoff for its first touchdown. But the advance ended in the first of the Cardinals' fumbles. Thereafter, the Chicagoans were virtually helpless until they took to the air with short, quick passes in the third period to set up their only score. King Hill, who completed 11 of 25 passes and did the greater share of the Cardinals' quarterbacking, got the touchdown on a 1-yard sneak after a Cleveland holding penalty had wiped out an interception by Kenny Coons and preserved the Cardinals' 79-yard march. Cleveland's other touchdowns were scored by Ray Renfro, Junior Wren, and Bill Houghton. Renfro took a 5-yard pass from quarterback Mill Plum in the second period after Bobby Joe Conrad had fumbled and end Paul Wiggin had recovered on the Cardinals' 11. Houghton caught a 36-yard pass from Plum late in the fourth period, and Wren ran 44 yards with another Conrad fumble in the third period. This latter fumble was the first of 3 by the Cardinals on successive plays. Wow. Rookie Kent Hall from Texas Texas A&M, maybe, Texas A&M. All right, fumbled the kickoff following Wren's touchdown. But, all right, so let's go to the next page here of the Chicago Tribune. The October 5th, 1959 edition of the Chicago Tribune. Is this here? Nope, that's not it. There we go. All right. And once again, here's the lineups. All right, we got, let's see. Okay. Fumbled the kickoff following Wren's touchdown, but fortunately, it got out of bounds before any one of the dozen pursuers could recover, and the Cardinals retained possession. Then on the first play from scrimmage, John Crow, the Cardinals' only running threat, fumbled, but he managed to recover, and the Cardinals went on from there for their touchdown. Cleveland's victory, coupled with developments elsewhere in the league, left the 6 Eastern Division teams all on a tie for first place, with 1 victory and 1 defeat apiece. Once again, there you go. There's those turnovers will kill you. And as I said, one thing I noticed a real lot, is that back then it's amazing how few penalties there were. I mean, here the Browns had 4 penalties, I guess, accepted on them, right? But for only 30 yards, the Cardinals had 2 penalties accepted on them for 22 yards. I mean, sometimes there's 6 penalties in the whole game. Sometimes it seems like there's almost like 6 penalties called on a drive. Sometimes it's almost just amazing how difficult it is to watch a football game nowadays, because it's like the refs get in on the action. It's like the Cowboys are playing the Eagles, and also they're playing the refs too. It's like, there's like 3 teams out there. It's absolutely freaking amazing how like every other play there's a penalty being called. Sometimes it makes it really unwatchable. Long shot low. Not sure what that guy is. Old Sarge. Yep. That's got nothing to do with this game. And you'll notice this is this is the Cardinals, and this is the Chicago Tribune. There's not a huge article on them. Right? And here's the Jim Brown touchdown right here. Jim Brown, right at center, Cleveland's great hurls 2 yards for first of 2 touchdowns he scored in the leading Browns 34-7 victory over the Cardinals in the rain and the mud Sunday, Soldier Field. There he is, 2 yards. One of the papers had the same picture, but I think he said he went 3 yards for a touchdown. It was only 2. But, after, as I said, once again, after the game was over, every team was all 1-1. So, even though the Cardinals got blown out, they were still right in there. I thought I saw another plain dealing. Jim Brown's called the plate. That's not it. Is there somewhere here? I saw another. Okay, here we go. There was another one here for the plain dealer. Let me read this off here. Share the plain dealer here. So there was another article for the plain dealer that I did not see, or did not read off, shall I say. October 5th. Here we go. Right on. Here we go. It's not very big. Football footnotes. Jim Brown, who carried the football 37 times yesterday against the Cardinals for a new Browns record, wasn't even weary after the feat. I don't like to run in that kind of footing but I didn't get tired, said the fullback who picked up 147 yards in the mud. It was all power running. You couldn't cut or maneuver on that field. Brown came within 2 carries of the league record of 39 set by Harry Newman of the Giants back in here it says 39. The other article said 1934. Jim carried 34 times in the game last season. Mike McCormick operated for a damaged knee cartilage only last August, went the distance at right tackle. The captain was tired but elated in the dressing room. The knee passed its first test and under far from ideal condition. The doctor who performed the surgery on Mike made the trip to Chicago with the team and was presented with one of the game balls. The other went to Jim Brown. The Browns were 3-point underdogs at kickoff. The Browns were not allowed to practice on the field Saturday because Cardinal officials did not wish to remove the tarpaulin. With the rain falling heavily, the canvas was taken off yesterday, several hours before the kickoff, in order that a sandlot game might be played. Wow. Walter Wolfner, managing director of the Cardinals, estimated the rain cost his club about $50,000 in gate receipts. Bleachers have been erected along the north end of Soldier Field, and it now is fairly compact stadium seating about 47,000. The last team to use this field was the Chicago Rockets of the All-American Conference. Interesting. And there's the starting teams. And you see the Browns were up 28-0 going into the fourth quarter. So once again, those turnovers will, and that was the one thing the Cardinals didn't. They had some nice runners, but they did not exactly have the offensive line that some of these teams had, where they could just blow holes open. They could just turn around, hand the ball off, and the guy get the ball, and there's a huge hole, and he just run for big. That wasn't the case. The quarterbacks were nothing super spectacular. They had a couple of nice receivers, but they didn't have, like with the Colts, they have Raymond Berry and Lenny Moore out there. Didn't have guys like that. Some teams like with Tommy McDonald running around for the Eagles. Some of these teams had just phenomenal receivers. Well, the Cardinals didn't have much of anything like that. So one of the things that Pop Ivy installed was like some type of like razzle dazzle kind of like maybe a guy, running back or a quarterback would hand the ball off to the running back who'd maybe go one way and hand the ball off to another running back, maybe going the other way. But in that kind of weather condition, that's a recipe for disaster. And as you saw, they fumbled 6 times and they lost 4 of them, and one of them directly got turned into a touchdown. And another one got brought down to about the 11-yard line where the Browns were able to run the ball in as well. The Cardinals fumbled the ball 6 times in this game. The Browns, not once. And when especially back then, when you're forced to pass, and you don't have Johnny Unitas or Norm Van Brock or somebody throwing the ball, you're asking for a lot. And it just wasn't meant to be. The Browns had the players, and the Cardinals did not. As I said, this would be a really bad season for the Cardinals, and it wasn't a great season for the Browns either, because they would finish. They said they'd lose 3 of their final 4, and they would finish 7-5. But at least they had a winning record. They said that the Cardinals have been wanting to get out of Chicago for quite some time. So so it was a horrible season for them. But after the season was over, there's a little pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and it was called St. Louis, where they would move there. And, not winning Super Bowls, but, they were on to a little bit, at least bigger and better things. They would at least have some winning seasons for them. So that's the way it was on this date, October 4th, 1959, as the Cleveland Browns would invade Soldier Field to take on the Chicago Cardinals in pro football first 50 years. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.